Mm. Over the period of years, I was really seeking God even more. I used to drive my car and say very traditional prayers, even in my car, because I just needed I just needed something that I hadn't got. I needed, and it was a very painful time. And towards the end of 1992, my son became really very ill. Our son had a complete mental breakdown, total breakdown. They diagnosed it as psychosis. He'd gone on holiday to Greece one day, and we got a phone call to say he's okay, but he's not okay mentally. My husband and I went to Gatwick to pick him up from the airport, and it was not like my son at all. He was in terrible fear and torment. He was saying, that person over there, see that person there, that person is going to kill us now. We have to get out of here. He was totally out of touch with reality, didn't know what was going on at all. And he had to be hospitalised. He ended up being in hospital for several months. And they tried different drugs, to antipsychotic drugs. And my life, your children are so precious, and mums, I think, especially too, it breaks your heart when you see something happening to your children. And I was absolutely devastated. The whole family was devastated. I have to say my family were marvellous at that time. They were so helpful, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law. They were there for us, and we needed it. And I remember one night had gone to the hospital, and I was driving home on my own, and they tried to reduce the drugs. And he began to scream and say that he was seeing things crawling up the wall. He was terrified. He was tormented. And I was in so much pain inside. And I drove home on my own because my husband was working a lot too, but I was spending a lot of time at the hospital. And I just remember it was dark and it was raining, and I was crying. And I was driving along the country roads from Sevenoaks, and I said, God, if you're there, please help me, because I can't stand the pain anymore that I was going through. I was going through such pain, and I really cried out to God for help. And I believe with all my heart, it didn't happen overnight. I can't remember now how many weeks it was afterwards, or how many months it was afterwards. But I had a friend who came and did my hair. Just used to wash my hair and set it and cut it and things like that. She used to come to the house, and she was something very special about her. She was a Christian, and she said to me, there's a doctor going to be speaking at a restaurant in Sevenoaks. His name is Dr. Richard Kent, and he's going to be speaking about a book that he's just about the book, but he's writing a book for the British Medical Association about people who have had out-of-body experiences. And she said, I really thought that you might like to come and hear what he has to say. But she said it is a Christian meeting, but she said it's going to have a breakfast first, and she said I'm sure that you'll find something in it that will interest you. And I didn't understand at that time, but her and her group of her people from her church were praying for me and the problems I was going through with Adam, very much praying for me at that time. So By this time, Adam had come out of hospital and was at home, and that was very, very difficult. He was like a zombie, drugged up, very, very difficult time. So I was just I needed so much help, and so I said yes, I'd go. So I went, and it was a sort of a breakfast first, and we had this wonderful sit-down breakfast, and then afterwards Dr. Richard Kent stood up to speak, and he began to speak about his life, about how his life had changed. He started to say about his life before he had made a commitment to become a Christian, and how different his life was then, and how he was searching. He didn't know what he was searching for, but how he had spent his life searching. He said, I remember he said, I used to go to parties as a young man. He said he was obviously a very clever man, and I think he came from a family of had a history of being doctors. And he said he had plenty of, as a young man, plenty of young women, plenty of lovely sports cars, and plenty of everything really, but something was missing from his life. And he said he used to go to parties, I can remember this, he'd go to parties and he'd end up in the corner speaking to someone saying, what is the meaning of life? What is it all about? What are we doing? What are we doing here? So he was searching. And I started really listening, because I thought, I'm searching. I'm so searching. And then he began to speak about the Bible, which in my church is something really that wasn't, it really wasn't, it didn't seem irrelevant. I mean, it didn't seem relevant at all, the Bible, in the church that I was going to. And he began to say things about the road to heaven is narrow and few who find it. And then he would quote the scripture from where that is from. And I started to listen to what he was saying. He said, Jesus said, you must be born again. And he quoted the scripture where it says you must be born again in John 3. You will not see the kingdom of heaven without it. And I suddenly realised, as he unfolded these scriptures to me that I hadn't ever heard of before, suddenly I began to realise that I hadn't known that. He was telling me something that I needed to hear, that I needed to know. And at the end of his talk about his life, he said, said he was collecting this data because he was writing the book, and he explained about that. And he then said, is there anyone here who wants to go to heaven when they die? And immediately, I was just there. Yes, I want to go to heaven because of the fear of all the years and the torment I'd had. And I said yes, and my hand goes up. Yes, I want to go to, yes. It was like a lifeline. That's all I can, he threw me a lifeline. And I grabbed it. Even though there was 70 or 80, 90 people in this restaurant, because it was a restaurant. I grabbed it. And I said, yes, I do. And he just said to me simply, come. And I got up, and I'm in front of everybody. And he said, Do you understand that you're a sinner? And I said, yes. And he said, Jesus died for your sin, to take it away. And asked me, did I want him to take it away? Did I want to receive Jesus in my heart, in my life, and be cleansed from the sin? Because he said Jesus died on that cross for us all, but for me, personally for you, personally for us all. But there has to be a response, because it's a free gift. It's a gift, and you have to open it. And I had to open my gift, and I hadn't. And here I was searching and living in torment all those years. And it was so simple. But I did it with all my heart. And it needs to be. It needs to be from your heart. You need to be so desperate. It's sometimes so desperate for a change in life. And it's only Jesus that can change your life and my life. And it's only He that did.